Hey folks, so today we're going to talk about the Haka. Generally speaking, the Haka is a catch-all name for a variety of different dances that are performed by the Maori people of New Zealand. They are performed when two parties meet. You might have seen the Haka on a viral video and been taken away because they're epic. Today we'll discover the origins of the Haka, and as always, excuse me if I'm flippant. Our story begins on the islands of Aotearoa, aka New Zealand. These islands, tucked away in the southern Pacific, are pretty far from everywhere, really. New Zealand is so isolated that it was perhaps the last major landmass settled by humans. The first men to occupy mainland New Zealand arrived on canoes from eastern Polynesia, sometime at the turn of the 14th century. These hardy people brought with them Polynesian culture that included a language, mythology, and practices. The descendants of these hardy settlers developed a distinct culture on mainland New Zealand and would become known as the Maori. Maori history and folklore was maintained through an oral tradition, and, according to Maori legends, the first Haka was performed not by man, but by a god. The sun god and his wife, the summer season, bore a child together. Each year, when spring would transition to summer, the heat causes the air to ripple and shimmer. This rippling of air was the first Haka, performed by the child of the sun, ushering in his mother of summer. The Maori were organized in familial tribes, led by a hereditary chief. Tribes would trade with one another, but often fell into conflict. Battles were waged with spears and clubs. The slain bodies of enemies would be eaten by the victors, a practice common to other Polynesian cultures. The first Europeans to contact the Maori were the Dutch in 1641. The Dutch didn't receive a Haka from the Maori because the encounter happened at sea. Instead of a Haka, the Maori paddled out on canoes and sounded war trumpets. A brief skirmish ensued, and the Maoris killed 4 sailors. The first Haka to be observed by Europeans happened more than a century later, in 1769, when an English expedition arrived. A member of the expedition wrote in his journal, "The war song and dance consists of various contortions of the limbs, which the tongue is frequently thrust out incredibly far, and the orbits of the eyes enlarged so much that the circle of the white is distinctly seen around the iris. In short, nothing is omitted which can render human shape. It's frightful and deformed, which I suppose they think is terrible." The war Haka psychologically prepared the warriors, but also intimidated the opposition. On some occasions, a sufficiently vigorous Haka could deter a conflict. I must add that other Polynesian cultures have dances that share many similarities to the Maori Haka. In 1820, a Maori chieftain found himself pursued by enemies. The chief, who escaped by the skin of his teeth, composed a Haka he named Ka Mate. The Ka Mate was intended to be a celebration of life. Centuries later, the Ka Mate would be performed by New Zealand's international rugby team, becoming known worldwide. Among the many different war dances that have emerged around the world, the Ka Mate might be my favorite. I hope you guys enjoyed. As well, if you guys enjoyed this and found it valuable and informative, please consider subscribing and help me on this journey.